Hey, what's up? I'm Dustin. I'm going to show you how to make this DIY Boba Fett helmet entirely out of cardboard, duct tape, and paint, and some popsicle sticks. I tried to make this very basic so you can follow along. You don't need a bunch of fancy tools for this. It's a very scrappy, at-home DIY version. It's very similar to the cardboard Mando helmet that I did a while back, but there are some key differences. The cheek shape is different, it's a little wider, the sides are different, and obviously very different paint. So I've got customized templates that you can download for free specifically for Boba Fett, along with links to all the materials and tools that I'm using today. So you should be able to grab anything you don't already have. So all right, I'm gonna show you how to do it. All right, so the first thing you want to do is print out these templates. There's a link in the description. They're free. I mapped out everything for you. We're gonna cut these out and then trace them onto the cardboard. And don't forget, this is all just the left side. Then you're gonna flip them over and trace the right side. These are actually my favorite scissors, by the way. There's a link in the tools section. If you want to make the helmet smaller, you can print the templates out a little smaller. So when you're printing, just set it to 90 or 80%. All right, so we've cut out all of our templates on the paper. So now we're gonna trace them all onto some cardboard, my favorite. Now just trace them one by one. And then don't forget the ones that say left, you gotta flip over and trace the right side too. When you're laying these templates onto the cardboard, take a look if it says perforation with these little dotted lines. That shows you which direction the perforation in the cardboard should go. That's gonna help us later when we try and bend these. Don't forget to label these really good too as you go. All right, now that everything is traced out onto the cardboard, it's time to cut them all out. I like to use a small utility knife like this, or for the smaller parts, using an X-Acto knife. Okay, all of the cardboard is cut out. Now we move on to the fun part, which is gluing it all together. So for that, I'll be using hot glue. People always ask what hot glue gun I use because this is a lot stronger than those little tiny ones. This is like a high heat. So this is my favorite one. There's a link in the description if you want to get this one too. It really holds together a lot better than those mini ones. All right, so I like to start with the kind of, I call it the cheek pieces, you know what I mean? Because it's the most difficult to get those angles. So start with this guy. This is like the bottom right here. Everything will build on top of that. So on top of this bottom piece, we're gonna use this really curvy one. Now this is where the perforation comes in handy because you're gonna wanna bend this really slightly along the lines of the perforation. That'll just help it curve more and fit along the top of this when we glue it. Cardboard is pretty flexible, so you can really just squeeze it and push it and make it curve the way you need it. All right, so that's kind of the cheek piece. That's the trickiest part really because there's so many curves. It should look like this when it's all put together. This is just the left side. So the rest should be pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna build out the whole rest of the left side of the helmet. Okay, so that's half. That's the left side. Pretty much put together. I do have a little bit of a gap here on the back, so I'll just fill that in with a little tiny piece of cardboard, glue it into place. All right, so the left side is complete. Now I'll just glue together the right side. You really want to squish the cardboard because a lot of these pieces, you want them to curve this way, but you also want them to curve this way. So just squeeze them into place before you glue them. All right, here's my two halves. Just gotta glue these together. All right, the main part of the helmet is complete. Both sides have been glued together. You could paint this if you wanted to. A lot of people ask if they can paint the cardboard. You can. I just recommend using gray primer over the whole thing first. But what I'm gonna do is cover this with duct tape, similar to how I did the Mandalorian helmet with gray duct tape. So this time I'm gonna use green duct tape. So I found this really good shade. There's a link so you can buy this one. But first you'll notice there are some extra pieces of cardboard we haven't attached yet. Those are gonna be separate. We're gonna paint those a different color. So this main body of the helmet, we're gonna just cover the whole thing with this green duct tape now. As you're laying the duct tape down, if it feels like it's getting too wrinkly over curves, you can do little cuts along the way, and that just kind of helps it like fold over with less wrinkles, but it doesn't really matter. Dang, this front part is tricky. right, last piece of green duct tape. All right, that's it for the green duct tape, looking pretty good. So we're gonna move on to the red front piece. So we find 2 pieces labeled top. So first, let's attach these. Oh look, I did one of my stencils wrong. I have 2 lefts, so gotta flip that one over. All right, give these a little bit of a bend, and then before we paint them red, I'm gonna hit these with some gray primer. All right, I almost forgot, there's a long strip that goes all the way around the back. So you'll notice on the templates, it says long strip. It's a 1/2 inch by about 15 inches. So just cut that out of cardboard and then we'll paint them all red together before we glue them on. All right, so now we're diving into acrylic paints. You can pick these up at a craft store for pretty cheap, but I've got links to all of them in the video description, all the colors that we're gonna be using. So for these top layer pieces, we're gonna be going with this red. I think deep burgundy looks pretty good. There's also one called ox blood that works. So we're just gonna paint all 3 of these pieces. All right, so with this red paint dry, I'm gonna glue both of these sides onto the helmet, right onto the duct tape with the hot glue. Okay, so right before I glue this top strip right across the top, I'm gonna look where the center is, and then I'm gonna just cut it right in the middle. I'll do that for both sides so they meet up perfectly. All right, so now we're just gonna take this long strip that we made and glue it all the way from this top corner, all the way around the back to the other side, and then just cut it to the exact size. All right, so that is all glued on. Now, I'm gonna move on to some paint in this sort of cheek piece. There's just like a slightly darker shade of green here, so I'll be using the acrylic paint. I think this green that I bought is not nearly dark enough, so I'm gonna add a little bit of black, mix that together, and then just paint this inner area. Wait, hold on, it's me, Dustin, from the future. I messed up and I painted too much. You're only supposed to paint the top curved part, not this bottom dome section. So I'm gonna figure it out a little later and I'll have to fix mine, but if you're painting now, top one, not the bottom one. Okay, continue. I think I wanna paint the inside edge so it matches because I got like a little bit of green peeking through. All right, so this whole back section is a slightly different shade of green as well. It's like a little bit more bluish, so I'm gonna mix together a blue, green, black concoction here. I'll try and find a closer match and put that in the links, but I'm gonna mix together my own. All right, paint all the way around is complete, and yes, I fixed my front pieces. So now we're gonna move on to the side pieces. Let's start with the easy one, that's the left side. It's really just this one single piece of cardboard, keeping it really simple. And then you'll notice on the template, there's these dotted lines. I'm just gonna do an indentation there just to give it some extra shape without getting too complicated. So to do that, I'm gonna make some very light cuts with the X-Acto knife. So I'm gonna just peel the top layer of this middle piece out. And then for this other line, I'll just indent it with like a small screwdriver. So now I'm gonna paint this with a light green acrylic, but first I'll hit it with gray primer, and then I'll fill in this middle section with some black marker. All right, so on the template, you'll notice there's this kind of horseshoe shape, so I'm gonna trace that on the top of this with a pencil, and now I'll paint that shape with this silver acrylic. Okay, this is ready to go, so I'm gonna glue it on with the hot glue. I'll just look at the pictures. It pretty much lines up flush with the bottom, and then there's a little sliver of red showing on the left. All right, moving on to the right side piece. This one's a little bit more complicated, but I've got all the individual pieces mapped out in the templates. So first thing, be sure you do the indentations just like the left side piece. Then the way these stack together is like this. This piece goes in the middle, this piece goes on top. Now the reason there's an indentation in here is that that's where the stem for his rangefinder is gonna stick out. For that, I'm using these little popsicle sticks. There's a link in the description, they're just the right length. So these are all gonna fit together, it'll all make sense. Just follow the guides on the templates. Cut these popsicle sticks to these exact lengths. So just glue these 3 sticks together exactly like they're laid out on the template with that longer one in the middle. All right, so that's the main part of the stem. So now just cut out these other 4 pieces exactly how they are on the template. Whew, these pieces are tiny. These work a lot better. All right, so with all of these cut out, here's how they fit together. These 2 smaller pieces go in the middle on top of this one. That's gonna leave a little gap for the long part of the stem to fit right inside there. And then this last one goes on top and kind of sandwiches them all together. And there you go. Okay, that is the rangefinder stem all completed like a little puzzle. So let's paint this one with the silver paint. All right, so with that painted, we'll just set that aside for a sec. We're gonna make the little top piece that goes on there. Now on the templates, I have 2 versions. There's kind of a more detailed view. You can kind of make up a more detailed version if you want, but I'm gonna show you how to do the very simple version. So you just cut out these 5 pieces with the cardboard, and then they just layer on top of each other. All right, so now this little top piece goes right onto the stem. Alright, so now this whole rangefinder piece is going to go into the side panel. So start by gluing this little piece with the notch onto here. Now here's where you can do the very simple version or the fancier version. The simple version is to just go ahead and glue this right in here. It'll just stay in place, you'll be good to go. If you never really plan on putting the rangefinder down, this will be totally easy and fine. But I'm going to show you how to do the version where this actually pivots down, so it's a little fancier. And for that, I'm going to use one little tiny nail, but you can use anything. You could even use a little piece of a toothpick if you want. It just needs something to hold it in place to pivot on. You could probably just stick this nail right through the end of the popsicle stick, but just to keep it from cracking, I'm gonna drill a teeny tiny little hole first. To hold that in place, I'm just gonna glue this last top piece on top. Be careful not to glue it on the stick itself. Leave that space open. All right, so there we go. This thing pivots 90 degrees. So now I'm gonna paint this with either a tan or a gold. I'm using gold, and I like the way it looks just on this raw cardboard here. All right, on top of the gold, there's another one of these little horseshoe shapes. So I'll use the same template piece as before, and I'll paint that on with some black acrylic. There's also one little dash of silver across here, so I'll hit that. Okay, I'm gonna paint the top of the viewfinder itself black too. I actually could have done that before I glued it on, but I'll just do it now. All right, while that's drying, there's a few pieces left. We're just gonna glue these together. 1, 2, 3 go together, and then these two go together, and then I'll paint those with the silver paint. All right, there's a handful of little lines on this piece, so I'll just use a black marker for those. All right, and then these two silver pieces just go right on here. All right, so now all I gotta do is just glue this onto the side. And be careful if you have a sharp nail sticking through here. You can either snip the tip of it off or add a little hot glue on the end to keep it from being so sharp. All right, so the last piece that we have to make is this back panel. So for these really small little holes, I'm gonna use a very sharp X-Acto knife. Okay, so now I'm gonna paint this red. All right, so I also painted the section that's gonna show through the panel right here. So now I'm just gonna glue this on. Another thing I see here is this little, I don't know, some kind of little button knob thing. I'm gonna cut off the end of an old pencil. This is perfect because the eraser's worn down. Oh, it's from the Ace Hotel. So I'll just cut that off, paint it silver, and then glue it on. I'm just gonna cut a hole out and then pop this in. All right, so there are two little triangles kind of right here. So you'll notice on the original templates, I've got some triangles on there, so you can just put those back into place, trace out where that triangle is. You can just draw that with a black marker. I think I'm gonna cut mine out with a sharp X-Acto knife. I'm just gonna put some black tape behind these holes. All right, now he has kind of a huge dent here. Looks like a bullet hole. And I think I'll just kind of cut it out and smash it in, and then we'll be painting it after. And I added some hot glue to try and keep that dent shape. Another cool detail I'm gonna add here are these yellow stripes that go along the side. So I'm gonna use a whole bunch of strips of masking tape and kind of mask this shape off, and then just fill it in with yellow acrylic paint. All right, now the really satisfying part of peeling all this masking tape off. All right, so this is looking pretty good, but it's a little too clean and even. So now I'm gonna dirty the whole thing up a little bit by just giving it some more dirt and grime, starting with a really light layer of black spray paint. I'm just gonna mist it over the whole thing, a little heavier in some parts, just to make it look a little bit more aged. All right, so now I'm gonna add a bunch more damage and scratches and make it look like the paint is chipping off and exposing the metal. So I'll take a look at some pictures for reference and just kind of dabble on some silver paint. Anytime you hit it along the edge, it really makes it look like the paint is chipping off. And then he's got some bigger chips and some bigger scratches. And then of course this bullet hole will fill in. I'm kind of going with the classic damage here, but you can look at the new show if you wanted to go with the updated look. All right, looking sufficiently beat up. So before I move on, I'm gonna lock all of the paint in by covering the whole thing with a clear coat. All right, so I know I keep mentioning this, but you can go find the links to all of the supplies and tools in the description of this video. I recently became an Amazon influencer, so now I have links to all that stuff, all super organized for you guys, including other things too, like my camera gear and other helpful things. And I might earn a commission on some of the qualifying purchases. So it helps you out and it helps me out. So go ahead and check out the links. All right, the very last step is the face shield. So I provided rough templates for this. Of course, you trace one side, then trace the other side. You wanna make sure that this really fits inside your helmet exactly how you want it before you go cutting your plastic. So this is the face shield plastic, and this one, the length that I have is thin enough that you can cut it with some heavy duty scissors. So I'll set that aside for a second and just focus on my shape here. So I'll start by giving this a little curve and then see how it fits. All right, mine looks good, but you can make any adjustments now, like if it needs to be a little longer or a little smaller. Keep in mind that the space in the front of Boba Fett is a little bit wider and more parallel than Mando's. All right, so I'll just trace out the template onto the plastic shield. I'm gonna use a white wax pencil for this. All right, so now I'm just gonna cut this out with my really strong scissors. I like these titanium ones. All right, so now I'm gonna put it into place with hot glue. You have to really hold it into place while it dries for each section. I start with the entire top edge, and then I do each side one at a time. All right, so even though I put a layer of glue down first before I attach the plastic, I add another layer of glue kind of covering the whole edge, which really kind of clamps it down when it dries. All right, well that's it, made out of duct tape and paint. Let's try it on. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure and check out my other Star Wars builds like the lightsaber or the Mandalorian helmet. And hey, if you want to shoot me a donation over on PayPal so you can support this channel and more videos and free templates, I'd really appreciate it. All right, thanks.